All right, we're live. We did it.
All right.
So finally, I got Roberta on. Just to thank you guys. I'm the One Fun Guy podcast. This is now live officially. So thank you, Roberta, for being my guest. I really appreciate it. If you didn't catch my other two lives on Facebook, I had a disaster trying to get her on, but we finally figured it out. We got it, so we're good. Just if you guys didn't hear me before, the podcast tonight is sponsored by the Clubhouse Inc. So if you like the shirt I'm wearing, you can find it over there. It's the Clubhouse is www.shoptheclubhs.com and www.shoptheclubhs.co. So either one, you can find the merchandise, you can find all this stuff over there. So thank you for the Clubhouse for sponsoring tonight's show. And so finally, I have Roberta on, the Tool Lady. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being on my guest tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm Roberta, the Tool Lady, and I appreciate you all having me. I appreciate you taking the patience to get it
Oh, no
going.
worries.
I think that's our number one lesson is that this is something that is technical.
Yeah,
I heard you explain to the audience, even though I was listening, I couldn't get on. I heard you say, well, it's some technical difficulties. Well, that's one thing about this. There's all kind of ways to stream, and there's all kind of
sure.
difficulties you could have, whether it's
Yeah,
your computer or your network that you use.
right.
For me, it was even my my internet service
Yeah,
server. So when I first started, my internet server was super slow. With StreamYard, it takes a lot of
yeah.
gigabytes. So it takes a lot, or to slow down and slur
So
your
yeah,
yeah.
you're exactly right. And I've been telling my audience that I want to use this platform. It's no secret that this is what I want to do. Like I said, it's just not playing nice with me. And
Right.
so once it does, it'll be great. I'm learning. I'm brand new to this. I know you've had some experience in the podcast universe. This is my sixth episode, so I'm learning. I'm taking
Right.
it in stride, and
Yeah.
doing my best. So thank you all for being patient, and we'll get going here. So can I ask one quick question?
Hmm.
How did you come up with the Tool Lady? I've been wanting to know that. It's been on my mind.
Okay. Well, by trade, again, I'm a counselor, a substance abuse counselor. I've been in that field for a while, a long time. And so what happened was that, and I usually do criminal justice. So it's usually people on probation, parole, or people who've had their children displaced. And of course, me feeling like I can help, right? I can help them get their children back or help them get their life back in order.
Sure.
So basically, my clients start calling me the Tool Lady. So,
That's
they
awesome.
say, hey, Roberta, I tried this, or I tried, because I teach skills such as assertive listening and or assertive communication, listening without responding, using I feel statements. So all of those things that you would that you would learn when you're talking to someone who works with people. So they like, I tried that and it worked. And so they'd come back to my group and they'll say, Roberta, we're going to start calling you the Tool Lady, because guess what? We use some of that stuff and it worked. So
That's
that's
awesome.
great. Yeah.
Well, that's a super cool story. I was it was on my mind, and I was kind of like, I wonder how she came up with that, because that's kind of
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Because I came up with my name kind of ironically too, because I wanted to use about 20 other different names that I had come across, and every time I would come up with a cool name, I'd Google it and it would pop up, and I'm like, can't use that. So then I kept going through the process, and I always tell the story, but a buddy of mine at work, he's got a license plate. It's the One Dumb Guy. And it kind of just was always like, we chuckle at it. And we're like, so I was like, so I didn't want to use that, because I was like, I actually wanted people to watch me. I'm like, well, if I call myself the dumb guy, people are going to be like, maybe this, isn't going to work. I mean, I probably could have clickbaited pretty good with it, but so I came up with the One Fun Guy, and it fit, and I Googled it right away. Nothing came up. So I started doing some searches more in depth, and then I went to get it trademarked, and I won it. So right now it's in the
Mhm.
process of doing it. So I'm locked in as the One Fun Guy podcast. So that's kind of how it started. But
Right, which is
you know,
really cool.
yeah,
I like it because it sets a lightness to a gentle lightness to the show.
Yeah,
to
and
your
I try to
show.
be upbeat, and try to, like I said, I came across a video, and one of the guys I follow said, if your podcast can do anything, he said it should do one of three things. It should either educate, it should entertain, or it should empower. And I always try to do all three if I can. But I figure at least I could be entertaining. That's kind of my go-to. So, if I could
Right.
educate somebody or empower somebody, that'd be awesome. But one out of three isn't bad, right? So.
Not at all. Not at all. And you might surprise yourself and get all three of them in one
Yeah,
show.
right. That's what I strive for. I try to do everything I can. And with you being a guest, with your background, I think I might be able to do all three. And
Right,
so
right.
so speaking of your background, it was kind of interesting how we met. So I told my group a little bit earlier on that we were in a podcast community together, and we stumbled upon each other, and we sent a few messages back and forth, and we actually set up a time and date that we called each other, and we were on the phone for about almost 2 hours first time we
Oh yeah.
talked.
Oh
And we
yeah.
just had such similar backgrounds for what we do,
Mhm.
and the people that we come across. And so it seemed natural, and we clicked right away. It was awesome. And I was like, you have to be a guest on my show. She's like, absolutely. And so we talked about being a guest on each other's show, what we were going to talk about. And we just kind of, had a natural progression. Now, over time, we were going to talk. We actually were going to she was going to be a guest on my show next month, and I was going to be a guest on her show the following month. And the couple people that I had lined up for this week, unfortunately, their schedules just clashed with mine. It wasn't going to work. So I was like, hey, do you want to be a guest on my show this week? She's like, sure. I'm
Right,
like, awesome. So thank you
right.
for joining us. And, but again, that's how we met. But that's what we wanted to talk about tonight, was like the relationships of social media and how we form these bizarre, almost unique friendships with somebody you've never met, which is kind of a really intriguing thing to me, and I'm embracing it as best as I can. You've done this a lot longer than I have, so how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm optimistic about it, for one, because it is a changing world, and it is an international platform. So we're not just talking, down the street anymore. We're talking to people across the pond, had you say. So and we're building a community. Like you said, you met me in a podcast community, and I've been podcasting for a year now. So and I picked it up as a hobby at first. Now, and not just a hobby, but I did have a mission. So my
Mm-hmm.
mission was to get to help people on a broader stance. So I wanted to help more people. That was what I initially started
Sure.
with. I started social services. So it was just to meet and help with other communities and just to spread it out. But also I wanted to mention, when we talk about interpersonal, not only that, what also attracted me to that topic, was that you had told me also, because I listen a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
so you had told me, hey, my wife actually supports me in this, right? In this endeavor. And we support each other. She started her business, she got hers off, and now I'm getting into my nook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was really intrigued by that, because that is another part of the interpersonal part of growing, in this avenue, where
Right.
it's so many different people, so many different things, and relationships are important. All relationships are beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I always say it, and I've been saying it all my life. I don't come from a stance of saying, well, you know what, I don't talk to this and that group of people or this group of people. I don't set barriers, because you never know what you might get
Sure.
from who. We never know, and they say, well, we might be even entertaining angels at a time. So we want to be open to that, whoever sends across our paths. So I think that was also the intriguement of speaking with you and starting this journey. I'm always supportive, of course, with everybody. So I'm
Right.
supporting you
Yeah.
on your journey.
It's
That's
it's
why
a
I said
great
earlier,
thing.
be patient, just breathe.
Right. And it's so, because obviously if you've been friends with somebody and you meet them in a casual setting, or you can grow and you come across somebody, in person, it's a little bit different because you see them, you know, you kind of had that rapport with them versus meeting somebody online for the first time. You don't know what you're going to get really, right? You take a chance
Right.
and you hope that it goes well. So my experience, luckily, so far has been really good. Everybody I've come in contact with has been awesome, super supportive. They say whatever they can to help me out. They'll send me messages that say, hey, you should do this instead of this. You should try this instead of that. It's been a really, really nice thing. But again, you don't really know what you're going to get. So I'm kind of always preparing myself for the person that's going to be like, why are you bothering me? Why are you bugging me? Why are you
Yeah.
messaging me? Why are you? And I've never had that yet. So everybody I've come in contact with has been good. Have you ever experienced that? So, like the negativity? Because I haven't yet. So,
No, because I always said I'm big on boundaries. So
mhm,
I'm big on boundaries even online. Although I'm into a social media nut or avenue, I'm still very much a boundary protector.
okay.
Meaning, if it's not something that navigates towards what
Right.
my lane, I don't usually get into it. So that keeps me away from a lot of stuff that's negative and a lot of things that has nothing to do with me. I don't get online and date. I don't,
Right.
none of that.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, look, no, that's not what I'm. But networking, yes, because
Yeah.
again, you just never know. You never know who may be sent your way or who
Right.
is your way. And also, like I said, I picked it up as, for one, I wanted to get a message out to a general, broader group of people. And B, I wanted to be able to make a difference. And so
Sure.
this avenue more than allows that, and also allows me to also learn and network with other people. So it also kind of like a hobby per se.
Right. So when you started your podcast, did you have anybody that you watched or anybody that you saw that you were like, oh, I could do that, or that seems interesting? Or did you just kind of one day say, I'm going to start, and that's kind of, did you have a guide, or did you have like somebody that you like kind of emulated yourself towards, or did you watch anybody, or?
Well, ironic a lot enough. The podcast that I did watch, I didn't like the people on there, but I would
Okay.
watch them because because they were intriguing. So they
Right.
were real dramatic. There was a lot of stuff going on. It usually was like, a lot of the it was a lot of the dating information. So, and
Okay.
so it was a lot of people like that. And so I really didn't like it. But actually, I have my son. Um, he told me, he said, Mom, this is for you. And at first I was like, well, I don't know about that. And he said, Mom, it's for you. This is something you should do. You have your own brand. You need to put your brand out there. So I didn't know really anything about it other than he kept telling me, this is what you should do. This is what you should do. Mom, I'm sure
Right.
you should do it. And so once I started, I was like, okay. And of course, like anybody else, doing a live is very, very complicated because you're live. You
Hmm.
don't have, you're not really recording. I hear just tell people, well, I would love to record and then go back over and buffer it, but we're not recording and buffering. We're actually taking from the
Right.
hip.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And that's the great part about it, because obviously you have a super personality and you're outgoing, and you're fun to be around, and that's kind of what I was drawn to when I first started talking to you, because you were so upbeat and positive, and we live in a world that's really not, right? We see a lot of bad
right,
things. And so,
right,
to be able to smile and kind of push through and persevere is awesome. And the only reason why I asked that question is because the one guy that I always watched was Sean Ryan, and I say it all the time. And he's, a Navy SEAL, so he invited all his Navy SEAL buddies on. So his first 20 episodes were all his friends, right? So I was like, well, I have a bunch of friends that are, in my profession that I could interview and I could talk to. But then he started to evolve, and he was talking to politicians, and he was talking to scientists. And then he started talking to, people about religion and people. And so I was like, I think that's a great platform, because then you're not typecasted into one thing. So, a lot of the podcasts I watch, they typecast into their field, which is great, but it's so elusive And I wanted to be more broad. I wanted to interview people that from all walks of life. So that's was kind of my philosophy when I started my podcast. I was like, well, I kind of like Joe Rogan, and he's got a billion followers, and I was like, he talks to everybody, right? Rock stars, movie guys, scientists, politicians, police
Yeah.
officers, military, doctors. I was like, that's kind of cool. I could do that. So that's kind of where I started my podcast from, was those guys saying, I want to try and find interesting people that I'll have on my show. So far it's worked.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, and so I didn't know if you had anybody that you watched that you were like, wow, that's really cool. I could do that.
Yeah. No, actually, I didn't. I did. Ironic enough, and I feel like with life, if you trust it enough, you
Sure.
trust life enough, you get guided where you need it to be. Unfortunately, I've always lived like that. So this is one of those things that, like I said, I know my son had told me, Mom, this is for you. And I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? What would I talk about? I don't know. And I had watched a lot of the dating ones, and I was like, oh, I definitely don't want to do that one. So, but I have watched some. I've watched several, and I did actually look up one, and I think I looked up the top 10 podcasts.
Mhm.
I'm just going to be honest with you, and part of the top 10 were people who were diverse, who also were diverse as far as where they went to during their podcast,
Right.
because some of them go out, and diverse in who they invite and talk to, because it's a plethora of people, variation. And then the other one was mostly self-development,
Okay.
development of self. So there's several different platforms that
Sure.
are really good, but they do vary. They are variants of different
Oh,
things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I went down the rabbit hole myself. So when I started podcasting, I watched a couple and I listened to a few. And then as I started getting more involved in it, I was like, wow, there's a lot of topics that a lot of people talk about, and I was always gravitated towards the law enforcement military side, of guys. But then I came across the Stallone daughters. Have you seen them? They're awesome, right? And they talk about everything and anything, right? Stuff that would probably make Sly blush. And so I was like, if they can relate to their demographic of people, obviously they have a celebrity dad, so it makes it a lot easier because they use the namesake, which is fine. But they've built, 2 or 3 million followers. So that's not easy to do. So even though your dad's a celebrity, you have to be relevant. And they are.
Yeah.
So for me, watching other people's podcasts and picking things up has been fantastic for me. So I like I said, I went down that rabbit hole real quick, and I started, watching, different types of podcasts. And then it just so happened that my aunt had a cousin who does a podcast about paranormal stuff. He reached out and said, hey, do you want to be a guest on my show? And I was like, sure, I don't know anything about it. And it turns out that we had a conversation that was awesome, and they filled me in on what they do about, ghost hunting and things like that. So just meeting new people and getting, a diverse group of people about stuff you're not familiar with has been great for me. So it's been an awesome learning experience, and I've been educated on things that I didn't really know before. So the learning experience has been fantastic for me, and I'm sure it has been for you.
Yes, it is.
So when you started your podcast, what was your reach of people? Did you have a core group of people that you said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast? Or you just kind of throw yourself out there?
Well, we just threw ourselves out there.
Okay.
I feel like we would probably be for Taboo Chronicle or put it all on the table. It would probably been for the whole family, actually.
Okay.
Because we cover mental health, we cover stigma of mental health, we cover all kind of topics that have anything to do with mental health, to be honest with you. So even autism of children, getting help, reaching out for help, relationships. We talk about it all. And then this year we had one of our hosts leave, and that goes back to the interpersonal stuff. we had one of our hosts, she left the podcast. So we changed the name to Taboo Chronicle. And again, we talk about things that people kind of get uncomfortable talking about.
Sure. So me and my buddy Paul kind of touched on that stuff when we did my second episode. He joined me and we talked about, the PTSD. We talked about, reaching out for help if the whole stigma against it, and, how, we're big, tough, strong guys, and we, you don't ask for help. We're the ones that are supposed to help people. And then, what do you do? So that was a great conversation that I had with him. And I know we had talked about, talking about that on your show. Which is awesome, because I think it needs to be in the forefront. I kind of wanted to keep this more, upbeat and fun about, just being, not that that's not, because you could laugh about it, right? When you're in the field and you see things, you can relate to things. And when we talk about it, like when I'm on your show and we go down that subject matter, we can laugh about it. We can bring light to it, even though it is a serious subject and it affects, millions and millions of people. But when you're on the other side of it and you can kind of bring light to it and kind of, I don't want to say joke about it, but when you can talk about it openly and, share stories and things like that, it makes it a lot easier. This was, I wanted to be more lighthearted because, the podcasting world is brand new to me. I've only been doing this for about a month, and I know you've been doing it a lot longer than I have. So my thought process when I was going to, have you on the show was just talk about podcasting and relationships, because I found myself in a very, very vulnerable position when I started TikTok, right? Because my wife's been doing this for many, many years. So she's been making videos. She's got, 4,500, she's going on 5,000 subscribers or followers. She's got a big YouTube channel. She's got, her business. She's got everything. So when she would do TikToks, I'd be like, what are you doing this for? Like, and she's like, oh, I make the videos and have people like it and share it. And so I was like, okay. And she's like, do you want to be in one? I'm like, sure. So I would be kind of a small part in one of her things to do. And we'd kind of goof around and laugh. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm done. And so once I started this, she's like, you need to start a TikTok and like, you need to have people follow you and do this. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do. So she kind of was like showing me the ropes of like things to do. I've never felt so vulnerable in my life putting myself out there, because I've always been pretty private about things. And now when you start the podcast and you have to get subscribers and people to follow you, I was in a whirlwind. I was like, I don't know how to do this. She's like, well, you need to start going live. You need to put yourself out there. You need to be real. You need to be honest. You need to be open. I'm like, I'm none of those things. I was like, I'm fun and I'm entertaining. Like when I go out to places, I can be, a conversation starter and I can fall right in. But doing it, looking basically into a mirror, right? Because you're in a camera and the world is watching you. And all you are is one person trying to be in this gigantic world of social media. How has that been for you? Because for me, it was pretty rough. I'm over it now. I think I'm doing a fairly good job. But man, those first couple lives were just intimidating because I didn't know what to say or what to do.
Well, I think for me it was the same because I'm pretty private. I try to have a boundary for everything because, like I said, for one, the field I'm in, my profession is very selfish. It's a selfish profession, meaning that I care for people all the time. I'm a caregiver at home. I've been a caregiver. So I always think of it like I got to have time for myself, right? And so going into and starting a lot of the social media stuff made me have to be, like you said, vulnerable. And then a lot of the information, because there's a lot of information out there about it. There's a lot of information about how to be successful at it. And one thing they do say is that we do have to be honest. We do have to be attentive. We have to be there. So, and meaning they say we have to be on these different media outlets, and you have to be consistent. Sure. And you have to be consistent with your followers.
That is true.
It's like another full-time job. So if you have a job, actually, this is like taking on another job.
Right. So how do you manage your time, like time management? Because I find it very difficult because I try to squeeze in my mornings when I'm off when my wife is still sleeping. I wake up early generally. So I try to go on TikTok to get my algorithms up. I come on Facebook to get my algorithms up, and I go to Instagram to get my algorithms up, because that's what it's all about, right? The more people, the more you go on and the more you show yourself, the more they respond back to you saying, okay, you play our game, now we'll help you with yours. So how do you manage your time? Are you able to find scheduling or?
Well, what I do usually, because I do work a full-time job.
Right.
And I do still have clients, individual clients that I do see certain times. So what I try to do is come on at least 2 to 3 times a week. And then the other times I try to leave it completely alone.
Okay.
I try to do 1 or 2 shows like I'm doing with you tonight, because if I have someone reach out and say, Roberta, would you be on my show? I try to do 1 or 2 or 3, about maybe 2 or 3 of them a week.
Okay.
To keep myself practicing and to keep myself engaging with other people, with peers that are also podcasters, and to kind of get a feel and keep going with it. So I try to have a balance like that. And like I said, because this is like another full-time occupation. It honestly is, because once you start like picking up on some of the artistic stuff, like you said, the creating of the videos, I haven't really, and what's ironic, before I started being a podcaster, I was going live back during COVID.
Okay.
And so, and then I stopped, and then I picked up podcasting. And so now the idea of going live is really hard for me, but that's something else that I need to do more of, is go live.
Right.
I'm just not a person like, oh, I'm at the store, look what I got.
Yeah.
Oh,
right. And it is bizarre, because there are people, like, if you're not in that universe, and you, like, I've come across some TikTokers, right, where you go on their live and they sit there and they look at the screen, like a blank face, and they don't say a word, and they have 300-400 people watching their show. And here I am trying to talk someone's ear off, and I got nobody. So it's a bizarre universe, because the more you're on, the more they promote you. And like you said earlier, when you're trying to be vulnerable and you're trying to be honest and open, some people don't relate to that. So a lot of times, if you're rude, if you're mean, if you don't say anything, if you like, people resonate with that, and they almost like that more. So it's a bizarre thing, because I try to be myself. Every time I go live, I try to be energetic, upbeat, positive, smile. But there are some people that just like get on there and like they just click the off button, and they get a whirlwind of people. And I'm like, I don't understand it. Granted, it's new to me, but I just find it weird almost. And it works for them, because obviously they get tons of followers and tons of views. So they're doing something right. And that's what I try my time figuring out, which is hard to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the other part is that the compromising, because some certain things I just will not compromise. Mm-hmm. So, and if that's not a compromise for other people, that's fine. But I'm not going to compromise it. So what I'm saying is, like, because I used to watch one podcast where he just basically, 2 of them, I think it was 2, where he just basically cuss out people all day.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is sometimes entertaining, right? Sometimes you need that in your life.
And so he had plenty of followers.
Right.
But that doesn't set well with me.
But if they're entertaining, right? If they're the Samuel L. Jackson of cursing people out, it's entertaining, right? Because you like to see that. Right. Because for me, like, on my end of things, when I started podcasting, I had been wanting to do this for a while. And I got sick in 2020, and I had a bunch of complications with some surgeries and stuff. And I just got tired of watching TV, and I needed an outlet. So I started listening to podcasts, and it would just kind of kill time repetitively. Then I saw that they were posting their stuff on YouTube, and people were actually like live podcasting. So I came across the idea. It was probably about 2021. And I told my wife, I was like, what do you think about me podcasting? And she's like, okay. I was like, well, I need a place to do it. I don't have an area. I said, I don't have any equipment. I said, I don't know what to do. Like, how do we even start it? And she's like, just go live on social media. And I was like, I don't have I didn't even have a Facebook page at the time. I would log into hers and just do that. So I created my own. How I started with social media was I said, well, what do you think if I had my own page so I can comment on yours? Because it won't let me comment on your own page. I'm logging in under you. She's like, well, go ahead. So I started one, right? So all of my friends were friends with my wife because I friend requested them and they're like, do I know you? I'm like, yeah, it's me. I'm just using my wife's page. And they're like, oh, okay, request. So when I started my own, I had to request everybody. And then I had everybody on my page. But then it was turned into like this kind of idea that I had in the back of my mind, and I procrastinated really bad. And that's my fault because I was like, I can't do it. I don't have the equipment. I don't have the place. I don't have a setup. And then all of a sudden things started unfolding where it was like, well, I don't really need a whole lot. And then I saw guys, that were like doing it from their laptop. And I was like, well, I have a cell phone and a laptop. So I have two of the things. I said, all I really need is a ring light. And my wife's like, use the one that's I don't use anymore. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So I just bought a few things and the space opened up, in our basement where my studio is. And all of a sudden it clicked and I was like, I'm going to hit the play button and see what happens. And here I am. So my only regret is not doing it sooner.
Right.
I missed out on a lot. So, but I'm making up for it now. So that's,
Right. And
but
it'll work out.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
work out
with me personally, I'm sure you probably can attest to this. When you first started, like I did, you try to get people to follow you, right? How did you go about getting the people? Like for anybody watching that is interested in maybe starting a podcast or even thinking about the idea, like I didn't know anything about it. And I probably should have done my homework before I went live because I didn't. Like I didn't look into doing this. I just went full speed ahead and I just kind of put the helmet on and went and attacked this thing. Did you have an idea of a platform and like what you wanted to do, or did you kind of just wing it as well?
Well, what happened is that one of the hosts, one of my co-hosts, she already had networked with a platform that was called The View here in Dallas, Texas. And with The View, we have a producer. So that's where it's a little bit different from someone just starting off, by themselves like you. Because we have a producer who does all our networking for us, all the groundwork to get us, to get us onboarded, to get our show started. She even meets with our guests before we go live to make sure that our stuff is working. Mm-hmm. So we do have a producer that helps us with that. She also downloads our information to we have like 7 other outlets across. We are on iHeart. We're Facebook, you name it. We're everywhere at this point because that's the work she does. So basically what I'm saying is that a lot of the stuff that our our producer does on our platform, if you're just starting off, you're going to be muddling through it. You're going to be learning the processes, right? When she already she's been in podcasting, I believe, for 5 years. So and she was in radio before she started the platform. So she already kind of had an idea. Yeah. So basically we came in, and again, we came in not to monetize, not to make money. We came in with a general idea that what we're going to do, we're coming out of COVID. We're going to basically save some lives. And it sounds pretty big, but honest to God, that was what was in our heart, that when we get out here, we get our voices live, people are going to know there's some kind of help. There's some, something at the end of the rainbow. And you have ladies like us or men like us that genuinely want to see people get better mentally. So
that's fantastic. That's a great story too, by the way, to have that like that.
So
like, honestly, that's not a lot of people would do what you do, right? To step up and put it out there. So just by you doing that and saying that's phenomenal. At least in my opinion, I think it's great.
Well, thank you. It sounds kind of crazy to me too. Yeah. And that's why I got a chuckle when I say it, because people they stand back, because I have people like, what's your end game? What's your end game? I know you're podcasting. What are you trying? Because people are so used to looking at motives,
Sure.
you know,
And
like,
again, I don't think that's a bad thing per se, but
yeah,
you have to have a reasonable expectation of what you're going to get out of it, right? Because I think a lot of people look at podcasts and they're like, well, these guys make, they have 1 million followers and they make great content but that just didn't happen overnight. Like they've earned that to do it.
yeah,
Like they started
yeah,
like we did, kind of
yeah,
at the bottom and work your way up. And I
yeah,
think that's what the end game for a lot of people, especially I get that too on a lot of the Facebook pages. Like someone will ask me, like, what do you want to accomplish out of this? And I said, I basically want to entertain people. I want them to feel good about themselves. I want to put a smile on somebody's face, and I'm passionate about doing it. I'm not monetized either. So this is a
yeah,
passion project for me. And I think that when you have that, it kind of lights that fire a little bit because, I look forward to knowing my guest. I look forward to like prepping my guest. I look forward to, telling them like, I don't come into this saying like, I'm going to ask these 5 questions you're going to answer. Like I want it to be natural, organic, and flow. And that's kind
yeah,
of like I have a guide of where I want to go, but I don't want it to take over, So I
yeah,
think that, in my opinion, when you're focused on just having fun like we are, you get more out of it and you give more. That's just
yeah,
my opinion,
yeah, you do,
you know.
yeah, I believe so. Because you've
And
been
down the
working
road, who
on it.
knows, right? If we ever get to the point where you are monetized and we do make money, like that's great, right? Then we hit our kind of goal because
Yeah,
that's what you aspire to. But for right now, that's the last thing in my mind. Like I want to have
yeah,
a good time. I want to enjoy myself. I want to enjoy my guests. I want to enjoy the company, and really want to learn things. And that's kind of how I am. So when I meet somebody for the first time, and I'm sure it's how you are. Like I just want it to be natural. Like I want it to be comfortable. I want it to be enjoyable. And if it's
yeah,
not, then we just move on.
yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I agree. So that's kind of the way it started, and things do work out really well.
Hmm.
Like I said, I think we say trust the process, or just trust where you're at with it.
Sure.
Trust your intuition. I believe that is the most important thing, that you learn to listen to
I
that inner
agree.
person, that
Yeah.
inner mind. Because that inner brain already telling you, hey,
Yeah.
this is going to work for you. This is going to work. Like I said, it took my son. My son was
Right.
saying it a little bit, but I was like, huh. And then, like I said, I met my co-host
Right.
at like she was speaking, and I was like, hey, how about we start our own
Right.
podcast? And she's like, what are we going to talk about? I said, just what we just got through talking about.
Right.
And
And that says a
so,
lot for you too, because you obviously raised a good son. For have
yeah.
him to push you like that is pretty awesome. So you've done something right. So kudos to
Yeah,
you.
either that
That's
or he
amazing.
sees me as a character, right?
Right. But that's the thing though, right? He saw something in you that said, you should really do this, where like I had to push for my wife. You know, she was like, you really could do this. And I was like, I don't know. And like I said, it was my fault because I drug my feet for a while. I
Yeah,
could have started this back in 2021 when it first became a thought in my mind. And she was like, you should do it. It seems like it's something you really want to do. I'm like, I just don't, like I said, I had every excuse in the world. Right. And I piled them up because it was every time I could have easily just said, yeah, I could do this, but I didn't. I was like, I don't really want to. I don't really know. How's everybody going to react to me? Not that I'm vain in any way. I don't mind what people's opinions are of me,
yeah,
but it's one of those things where it's like you find reasons not to. And then I was at a training with her about 3 months ago, and we were just kind of having a small like topic, like we were just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And
hmm,
one of the girls that was there, her husband, I kind of told him what I was doing, and he's like, that would be awesome. You should definitely do it. Because he's like, I would love to be a guest on your podcast. And so it really resonated to me. And I think I told her on the ride home, I'm like, I really want to do this. And she's like, well, then go ahead and do it. So that's how it started for me. It was just, I foreshadowed it for a while, but I just never had, I guess the right word is courage, right? I never had the
yeah,
courage to do it. And I just always found an excuse of why I couldn't. And one day I was like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to see how it goes. And if it fails and crashes and burns, at least I tried. And so
right,
far it's been the exact opposite. The community's been great. All my relationships have been fantastic. And I've met a bunch of new people, including yourself, which has been great because now we're friends and
yeah,
we have this relationship now that we've grown to have, this
yeah,
friendship come naturally. And then, like I said, after talking to you, our backgrounds are so similar. It's like,
yeah,
we could have easily met anywhere, right? And kind of just
Yeah.
cross paths. So the universe works in this weird way that, some people just come into your life and, for a reason. And,
Yeah.
for us, it was just kind of, we bumped on social media, which is, again, I don't find it weird or unnatural, right? It'd
Yeah.
be like meeting anybody in anywhere else. If you
Yeah.
meet somebody and you click, you talk and you kind of go from there. And if you don't, you just kind of say, hey, it was nice, meeting you, but that was it. So for
Yeah.
me, it's been, like I said, a fantastic experience, and everybody I've met so far has been great. So, it's really
Yeah.
been nice for me,
Yeah, it has been. It
you
has
know.
been.
So
And
so
mhm,
let me ask this. So you do several podcasts. You have a couple that you've talked about. When
mhm.
you set up your shows, do you have an idea of what you want to talk about with your guest, or do you have like an idea of like who you want on, or how do you select that? How's your process?
Well, I go by actually the calendar.
Okay.
So I go by the calendar, and it just gives me kind of like a baseline of what I want and what I want to explore.
Okay.
Now, on my own personal show, Put It All on Red, I'm going to have women this month. It's Women's Month.
Sure.
So I'm going to have some diabolical women come and be guests. The first of the year, I had a financial advisor, a spitfire, a lady who wants to
Okay.
make people millionaires. When I
Right.
talked to her, that's what she said. God has placed in her to make people millionaires. God has planted some seeds in folks that,
Sure.
and He has people with things in their DNA in their minds that they want to bring to this world, this planet, and
Absolutely.
place out. So then I had an artist for Black History Month, which is February that we're
Okay.
coming out of. So I had an artist and a filmmaker. So now we're in March. Like I said, I'm going to have some powerful women that are going to be joining me, and
That's
they're
a
just
great
going to
idea. Actually, I never
yeah,
ever never thought about that.
yeah. So just an avenue of
Okay.
I just go off of that calendar, and then I go from there. And I believe I had you, and I believe in May,
Right.
and yeah,
Which
and
that'll still
so
happen, because what I did is I made a list of everybody that I've ever come across in my life that I thought would make an interesting guest. And
yeah,
so when you ask people, sometimes they say no, right? So I assume that everybody would say, yeah, I'd come on your show. So I've asked a few friends and they're like, it's not for me. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm like, nope, no problem. So my list kind of grew off of necessity of people that I knew. But
yeah,
then I kind of was like, as I started delving into these communities, now I've met like people that are like, oh, I'd love to be a guest on your show. And I was like, I don't really know anything about you. I was like, not that that's bad, but I was like, let's build a little bit of relationship before I just have you on my show. Cause I don't really know,
yeah,
if the conversation is going to be natural. I'd rather have it be more organic flowing. But the people that I've reached out to and have reached out to me have been great. They're like, yeah, let's set up a time and date where we can talk and we'll discuss stuff. And I was like, that's pretty awesome, because I don't know how comfortable I would have been, 3 years ago if somebody said, hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? I'm going to reach out to you and we're going to talk. And I'd be like, yeah, no, we're not. And so it's just kind of like, now it's more like the openness, and like my mindset's completely different. And now I
yeah,
look forward to like having conversations with people. Like it's kind of a unique circumstance that we find ourselves in, because people from all walks of life now have sent me messages and was like, oh, I came across your show, I'd love to be a guest. I was like, awesome. So let's set up a date and time and we'll talk. And everyone's like, yeah, that's great, let's do that. Where most people would probably be like, no, we're not gonna do that. Like, that's not how this works. And everybody I've come across now has been fantastic. They're like, yeah, let's set up a date and time, we'll talk. We send messages back and forth. We've actually had conversations on the phone. So a couple of my guests that I have lined up now for the next few months have been people that I've just met naturally via social media, which is awesome.
yeah, yeah. And it's good to vet your guests, because I've had guests that I've spoke with
Mm-hmm.
prior, when I first started. I would just say okay, and maybe ask a couple questions, but it does take probably a 45 minute to an hour conversation,
Mm-hmm.
because basically that person may hit on what you feel as though you want to hear, but And if you continue talking, you may go on to hear something that you like, okay, that really doesn't line up with what I do or what I have. Like say I have put it all on red and then I do Taboo Chronicles with the other ladies. But Taboo Chronicles, as you said before, when we're gonna be kind of upbeat, we're not gonna talk about
Mhm.
trauma, PTSD, we're not gonna do that. So I have to stay in mind with that when I'm vetting people for my show, because my show is more my personal show is more upbeat. It's more
Right.
of overcoming and more of getting where you're going and leaving nuggets for people who
Yeah.
need to reach out and get those nuggets, right?
Right.
So when the other one is more advocacy and
Sure.
more of, hey, you may need help. If you need help, this is the number. So those are two different contrasts of shows.
Right.
So what I have to do with my other show, my own show, I do have to talk more and I have to like listen and be sure, okay, this is definitely a good fit. Like I said, I look for over the ballpark people. I
Yeah.
look
And
for like,
that's how I've been too. But it's really weird because I have a pretty diverse background on a lot of things. Like I enjoy music, I enjoy sports, I enjoy we could talk about pretty much anything that I've been a part of. But the community of people that like have reached out where like topic matters that I'm not familiar with has been very unique. Like I said, when I was on the Insane Joe show, he was like, we're talking about paranormal stuff. I was like, I don't know. Like, not that I don't believe that they exist, right? Because I'm not saying it, but I was in a totally different like
yeah,
genre that I wasn't familiar with. And all the stuff that I've known about ghosts has been on movies, right? Like I watch horror movies, but I don't know
yeah,
anything about ghost hunting. I don't know about but what I learned about the technology, the equipment, the actual like places that they go was very unique to me. And it was completely, out of my element. But when I was done with the podcast, I was like, wow, that was pretty amazing because I didn't know a whole lot about that, but I ended up walking away with a lot of knowledge. But
yeah.
then I ended up with the other guys on the show were like, we'd love to have you back. You were a great guest. And I was like, I was. Like, I didn't really think I did anything that fantastic. But they're like, no, you really knew a lot of stuff. And, I was like, well, all I knew was from watching horror movies, right? Ghost movies and stuff like that. And so it was a very unique experience, but it kind of like, it changed my thought process about like, yeah, no, I might not be well versed on a whole lot, but I can kind of adapt fairly well. And the uniqueness of the topics that I can relate to with
Mhm.
what I do for my line of work, what I've done in my past, like I think I have a pretty wide background of like stuff I could talk about. So I thought, this would be very like, I'd be uncomfortable and I wouldn't know what to say. And I just kind of sit there and not. And I felt like I was in the conversation just like the rest of them. So now I realized, well, maybe, we can talk about music or we can talk about, so, it just kind of, for me, I was like, I think now my mindset is like, well, when I get guests on, I don't have to like, they don't have to be this person or this person. They could be anything. We could find a common ground and talk about it. So I think,
Yeah.
when you hit on it about, your guest, I find myself in the same kind of boat now where I feel comfortable talking to pretty much anybody about anything, which is unique because before I would only stay in my, my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, and two, most people like to talk about themselves and what's important to them. And when you have a person that is comfortable with that, because that's basically what you're asking
Sure.
to do. Come, show up, be comfortable
Right.
about what your passions are.
Yeah, and it makes
Then,
it so much easier when you have, not that they're like-minded, but
mhm,
when they have interest on their own and they're like, I'd love to talk about this or I'd love to talk about that. I'm like, let's go. You
yeah,
you fill me in on what you want to do. Like, when we talked, the first time you're like, oh, we could talk about this, we could talk about this, we could talk about this. I'm like, we could talk about a lot of stuff. You pick where you want to go and we'll make it happen. And
yeah,
that's kind of where my mindset was. But with you being my guest on the show, I want my audience to learn about you because they pretty much know all about me. So
hmm,
from that standpoint, when I have guests on, I'm like, talk about yourself, talk about your background, talk about what you want to. It's an open forum. As
hmm,
much as you want to give me, I'm fine with that. If you don't want to talk about anything, or you're not comfortable talking about something, fine, we'll move on. And that's, you know, how I approach all my guests. I don't want to force them into doing anything they don't want to do, but like every conversation I've had with all my guests have been really natural and free flowing. And, you know, I tell them an hour goes by quick. I was like, before you know it, when we start talking and we're having a good time and we're laughing and we're joking around, it's going to fly by. And like us, you know, we've been on now for 51 minutes and I could talk another 2 hours if I wanted to, you know?
Yeah,
You know?
basically, yeah. Well, and now, you know, every time, you know, you're talking about being a new podcaster, every time I get off, I have a surge of energy. Do you have that surge of energy?
I do. And it's like I crave it more. Like I want to keep going and I want to like have that person back on and I want it to be like more organic, because what I do is as soon as I get off, the first thing I do is check my messages and everybody will be like, great show. You should have talked about this. Great show. You should have brought this up. Great show. You should have. And I make notes. Like I have a notebook and I write all those down. And so that's when I have like my next guest, I'll talk about those topics. So like when I have you back on as a guest, you know, down the road, we'll hit everything that everybody wants to talk about. They're like, she was a great guest. You should have talked more about this. And I'm sure they're going to focus in on, you know, what you do for your living, because that intrigues a lot of people, right? About, you know, the parallels we have in our work. So I'm sure I'm going to get all the messages about, you should talk to her about this. You should. So next time when you're on, we'll have that list and we'll go off of it. Just like when I'm on your show, I'm sure your guests are going to want to know about me and what I do. And I'm pretty much open about it. You know, I don't get into the specifics of it like you do, but like I'll talk about, you know, my experience and my work and what I do. And I, you know, I have no problem with that. But it's just, it's interesting because I read the comments and I get the feedback and I take the critiques, and, you know, everybody will say, you should have talked about this. You should have talked. I'm like, you're right, I should have. But when you're live, you don't think of it, right? Like my topics of conversation with you were about podcasting, relationships, you know, talking to other people. But you give a little bit of your background and everyone's like, well, we want to know more about her. Like what we want to talk about, you know, the PTSD. We want to talk about the mental illness. We want to talk about substance abuse. We want to talk. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But I only have an hour. Like I'd love to talk to her for 5 hours if I could. I don't have the time. But I'm sure I'll get all the messages saying you should have. And I will respond back like, I know, I should have. But yeah, I get the burst of energy. I get the excitement. And then I kind of get the like Christmas morning, right? You know, you've built up this stuff. You had a great conversation. And now it's kind of like you've opened up all the packages, right? You've torn through everything and you've got all your toys and you got all your gifts and you're like done. And you're like, now I want to, like, the fun starts. So now I get like that more pumped to get my next guest to write down all the things I want to talk to them about it and get, you know, their background in it. So yeah, it is very exciting.
Yeah. And sometimes I surprise myself because I'm like, and I've co-wrote a book as well, and I'm writing some more books. Well, I'm co-writing another analogy, and then also a couple books of my own. But I find it interesting that I'm my worst critic. And then, you know, you were saying with your friend base, it's going to be more people that you don't know support you. That's been my experience, because a lot of my friends, they're not into this world at all, but I'm meeting a lot of new people that are.
And that's what I want to have happen, right? Like I have my circle on Facebook, but I want to get out of my circle. I want more people to share and invite their friends in and watch. And, you know, and that's what, you know, I always tell my guests, like, you know, next time you're on, let's build this up. You know, we can talk about, you know, more and more and more and more, because I really want to have repetitive guests. Like, and I don't have the means to have a co-host, which would probably make things a lot easier if I had somebody to be with me. But I really feel that like the more I have the guests that I've had on come back, and the more that like other people get to know them, then they start following them, because they all have lives and families and things like that. And that's how you get to learn about somebody, and you get to appreciate somebody and what they do, you know, because a lot of times what we do goes under the radar, right? People take it for granted. They're like, you know, when I come into somebody's life, it's usually not very good, right? So they don't want to see me. Same with you, right? We're there by default. The system is set up for people to be brought in front of our faces. We don't go out knocking on doors, right? People come to us, and it's like, so how you approach the situation is how you get through it. Whether,
Yeah.
you're trying to de-escalate something, you're trying to calm somebody down, or, they're in a stressful situation and they don't know what to do. That's where we come in. And like you said, we're caretakers, right? We're providers. We
Yeah.
give. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So, and again, that'll be a subject for another show, which I hope you come back as a guest. You were fantastic. And
well, all right. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation. It's always good. It's always a good conversation.
I definitely
and I appreciate your wife for helping us.
Yeah, she was great. Thank you for doing that.
The woman power to her.
And we made it. And I'll like I said, I'll post this all on YouTube. Before we leave, is there anything any socials you want to shout out, or you want people to follow you on? Or
just follow me. I really need TikTok followers. I'm new to it. But I do want to go live on TikTok, so I need help with it. I need is it 1,000 followers before I go live on there?
So I will help you get to TikTok followers, and then me and you will go live on TikTok, and maybe that'll be our thing. Because me and my wife, we go live on TikTok together a lot. Like it's very frequent that we do that. But we do it for the algorithm, right? To get people to follow her business and people to follow my podcast. But when we get on, we have this chemistry where we'll get on and we won't tell anybody we're husband and wife, right? Like we get on and we're two people. And so people will talk and they'll be like, oh, wait, how do you guys know each other? And we're like, yeah, well, we're married. And it's like, oh, and so then the conversation kind of cycles into a whirlwind. But yeah, I'll get you the followers on TikTok. So guys, if you are on my show watching it, Roberta, just tell everybody you're the tool lady across platforms.
Roberta the Tool Lady across all platforms.
Awesome. So guys, if you're listening, follow the Tool Lady on Facebook and on Instagram, and we will get her to the 1,000, and then you can see us go live. And when we go live together, I'll record it and download it, and I'll send it to you. We can post it on our socials because that'll be fun, and that'll be another platform. So the three of us can get on, because I'm sure Crystal will want to get on this too. And we'll just go from there. So we'll get you all the followers you can get. So I'll share this to everybody that I have watching here. I'll send all your links. I'll put them in the YouTube when I edit the video. I'll put all your socials in there across the board, and then we'll have them linked to you, and we'll get you those 1,000 followers quick.
All right. Well, thank you.
That'll be good,
Crystal. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Like I said, follow the Tool Lady. Follow me. Subscribe to our YouTubes, our TikToks, and our Facebook. If you send me a friend request, I'll accept it. And if you like the show, guys, please share it across all the platforms. This will be on YouTube in about an hour. I'll do some editing right now. I'm actually going to hop on TikTok while I do that and kind of go from there. But follow the Tool Lady. She was awesome. She will definitely be back. Roberta, you were great. Thank you so much for being a guest. I appreciate it.
You. Look, let me
and, thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.